and it's a hot little villa in Crescent Oaks. So we wrote the contract where they are offering $410,000. What I did, if we scroll down to the addenda section, was I let the other agent know that we have a little additional addendum here, the escalation clause. And it looks like this. So this is the Keller Williams escalation addendum. And I'm telling them that we've made an initial offer here of $410,000. Got the property address, and now it's telling you that we are going to kind of bid, if you will, in increments of $1,116. And we're going to make it stand out a little bit more by using that odd number. And we're not going to exceed a total purchase price, though, of $415,116. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, without having to go back and forth, right out the gate, hey, I am willing to pay this much above and beyond the highest offer you've received. A lot of times you will have an agent that says, oh, we have another offer coming in. Well, this is asking that agent to please show us evidence of that as well. And I love that part of this, because now we're kind of asking them to prove it. So Jess, any input on that so far?
No, I think you got on, but I want to bring up this $1,116 because we actually talked about this last night.
Yes, we did.
So a couple of agents have shared that they've been using escalation, but they've been losing. And one thing that we're finding is escalation clauses are becoming more and more popular, and agents are learning about them and saying, wow, that's a really smart idea. I'm tired of losing, so they're starting to use it. But a lot of agents do the same thing. They say, we'll do $500 increments to this round number. So it's kind of like eBay. We were discussing it last night. It's like eBay. If you're going to try to outbid someone, it might not be by $5. It might be $5.06. So there's some strategy involved. So if you're like, why in the heck did she offer $1,116? Just know that if Toni wrote this escalation addenda in this offer, and I happened to also be at Keller Williams and understand an escalation, and we both put a $500 increment there or a $1,000 increment there, we could almost be like nullifying each other and really not getting ahead. So there's a little extra strategy that she's sharing there in that. So just want to make sure that gets noted.
Yeah, we talked about that last night, and at first I was like, well, no one's using them anyway, so why would you? But yeah, it makes more sense. You would want to do an odd number.
They're becoming more and more popular because people are starting to see them, and a lot of other brokers just don't know these. What an escalation clause, they don't teach it. So the other thing is let's just say I'm the agent on the receiving end of this offer. Say maybe this is my listing and Toni as the buyer. Toni's going to want to call me and talk to me about this, because if I'm not educated about what this is, I may not realize what I'm looking at or how it works, and I might not really be giving it the clout that it deserves. So I think that's worth mentioning as well.
Yeah, and the other thing too, I do come across a lot of agents who don't know what this is, and I don't make them feel uneducated about it. I'm so excited to share this with them. I'm so excited to explain, oh, okay, great. Let me tell you what this escalation clause is. So I give them a heads up, I explain to them, and I let them know.
Agent that doesn't know is going to thank you, just like someone taught you what it was.
Exactly. Right? I was so thankful. And I just let them know this is a great tool for you to have in your toolbox too. And gosh, I don't even know why I'm sharing it with you, because now you might have to use it against one of my buyers, So anyways,
so Toni Buffalo has a chat for you. He says your initial offer would start with $100 or $500 on the end, giving it the boost it needs as well. So $300,500 as an initial offer. That's a great suggestion as well. It's these little strategies, you guys, that do make a big difference. But yeah, there's so much truth in not making someone feel bad or wrong, or like they don't know what you're doing, or like you're talking over them, but saying you're going to love this. In fact, if you're writing offers for buyers, you're probably going to want to start doing this. And just like someone taught you, was it Lou that taught
It
you?
was Lou.
Figured it was Lou. Hi, Lou. We hear you.
It was Lou Tutko.
Lou Tutko. Thank you, Lou. Does anyone have any questions? Now, so here's the thing. There's quite a few of you on. So just unmute yourself or chat if you don't want to unmute yourself. If you have any questions specifically about this. Is there anything else that you want to talk on this strategy, or let's even kind of role play what a transaction might look like that you've completed? You know, are there any things that you want to add to that, or any questions anyone wants to ask?
I have a quick question. I just want clarification. So that, Toni, you wrote escalation clause on number 19, correct? In other?
Yes, I just wanted them to be aware that there was an additional addendum attached.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great question. Great question.
This is Barb from the Gulf Side office. I just want to get your confirmation on something. I just recently had a multiple offer situation, and believe it or not, 2 offers, unsolicited, came in with the same escalation, both with escalation clauses, both escalating to the same amount. Actually, one was $500 more. And let me just make sure, what I want to make sure of is they basically escalate over the other offers, but then they escalate against each other, correct? Until they reach their max, right? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, basically, if they're accepting the escalation clause, those would compete against each other. But, you know, this will tell you that they have to let you know within 1 hour of each escalation. So essentially, if one was $500 more, they're going to go back and say, hey, you know, this escalation clause is $500 more. It's in $500 increments. So this one is the higher valued escalation clause. That's probably the one they're going to go for. But that really drives home Jessica and Lou's point of giving just a little extra push by providing an odd number that's a little bit higher than the 410,000, you know? So even though it was $500 more, maybe if that person had written the escalation clause of, you know, an initial offer of $412,700 and then bumped it up in, you know, $1,100 increments, it might have been a little more noticeable and gotten them to that point that they needed to win that escalation.
Well, and they come across as a very savvy buyer, right?
Well, that, Jess, that literally, and Toni, that literally just happened to me. So I had the listing and we had dueling escalation clauses. And so what we ended up doing is contacting the one that she picked and said, hey, we have dueling escalation clauses. I'll show you the other escalation clause. Are you good with going to the peak of your escalation clause? And they agreed and we were done. So.
Right.
So Lou, were they both KW agents? I'm just curious. Are there?
No, one was, and that's actually a good point. No, one was a KW agent, and they felt like that they had the right to see the executed contract just because they presented the escalation clause. Well, just because you present the escalation clause doesn't mean you get to see the executed contract if they didn't choose yours.
Right.
Right.
And because, you know, we have an obligation still because that contract may not go through. So it was kind of a weird, it's kind of a weird deal, but it literally just happened last week. So
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Queen from Gulfside. So basically they're looking at the 4,015. So pretty much they're looking at that number versus the increment. So if it was $1,000 increment, say it was 400,000, increments of 1,000, and the max would be 15,000. They're really looking at that, the bigger number, correct?
Well, so
I'm kind of, yeah, I'm
let's
kind
break
of
it down like
confused.
super simple numbers. If I
Yeah,
have
ABC.
an offer of $1,000 and I'm going up in $50 increments. If the last person bid $1,025, I'm going to make that $50 increment of $1,075. So I'm beating them by that much, but not to exceed, let's say, $1,500. Does that make sense? So it doesn't mean that I'm automatically going up to that $1,500. It just means that, let's just say the highest bid is $1,450 and I'm doing $50 increments, then I might win at $1,500 because I'm not exceeding that amount, but I'm not just giving that money away either. I'm not giving them the additional maximum amount. I'm just going up in increments. So if you've ever been on eBay, it's a very similar concept to that.
Okay, so basically, so this offer is for $410,000. So say another offer comes in $410,500. Your increment is 1,116. So at that point, your offer is going to outbeat that one because theirs came in at just over 500 versus yours. You have a clause in here pretty much for 1,116.
Right. So if theirs was $410,500,
you outbeat them.
They're going to go up 1,116. So my bid would then be 4,111. I'm sorry. If I could add 400,000. Good gravy, Mabel. Thank you. There you go.
There you go. 411. Okay. So yours will be more.
411,116. You got it.
Thank you. I could not say that out loud. I'm looking at the number like cross-eyed.
You're fine. So your offer will beat theirs pretty much.
Yes.
Okay.
But we have to provide evidence though that we have an offer to beat as well. So
okay.
Yeah, I have a question on that. Lou, Lou, you said that you do not have to show that other offer that you received, the competing offer?
Not to the person who didn't win.
Oh, okay, fair enough. But if my offer is the winning offer, I can request to see that to make sure that my clause actually needed to kick in.
Absolutely.
yes.
Okay, I misunderstood that, my bad. The other question I have, I've used this in the past and have lost out because I can't believe how high some of these other offers are willing to go. I mean, I'm pushing the limit of what I think it's going to appraise for. Do you not even worry about that? Go up if the buyer is willing and then deal with an appraisal? And I feel that some of these people are just going up so high because they know the appraisal is going to come in lower than that, and then they'll get it for a lower price anyway because of the appraisal.
Well, I think those are conversations worth having because you always want to reach out to the other agent when you're presenting an offer to just see how you can sweeten up that deal. How can I appeal to the seller? When do they need to close by? Because perhaps your folks have flexibility on that. We're going to have as short of an inspection period as possible. And hey, by the way, I'm looking at the comps and we're willing to do an escalation clause up to this amount, but have you had the conversation with the seller you're working with about what happens if it doesn't appraise? So those are all worthy questions to ask prior to submitting the offer so that you can let the buyer know, hey, this is the conversation I had. This was the response. It's up to you. They're saying they're going to go to appraised value if it doesn't, or they'll meet in the middle, or they're expecting the buyer to pay the difference. So you need to have those conversations up front.
And those are conversations every one of you should have every time you're making an offer. And that would be a great time to bring up escalation clause and make sure that they understand what it is or they're familiar with it.
Right.
Yeah, and I did, and their response was just that, I mean, because we were able to, close quicker. We had a 5-day inspection. They did. At the end of the day, they wanted the most money, and he said, "Yeah, we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
and
can't win them all.
It's becoming more and more common, and yet at the end of the day, it's your consumer that you should be thinking of, like, where does their stomach hurt? Like, what's their end game? What's their walk away number? I wouldn't gear it towards what you think it's going to appraise at. I would focus on the consumer and say, where would you be bummed out if you missed out on this house, and what's your walk away number?
And ultimately, like Lou and I have had this conversation before, and we've bounced off of each other like, gosh, this is a tough one to value. What do you think? Because, you know, if you're concerned about it, ask another agent to be a second set of eyes as well. But the other thing, you know, I would definitely consider letting the buyer know that, hey, by the way, the value of a property is really what someone is willing to pay for it. And it's the appraiser's job to just confirm that amount for the lender. Or if you have a cash buyer, it's the appraiser's job to satisfy the cash buyer knowing that they're not overpaying. But some cash buyers, actually on this specific deal on Dartford, they are a cash buyer. The comps do not even get anywhere near 410,000, but these folks are in their 80s and they're like, you know what? Right now for us, it's just money. We don't care. We want this place. This is what we're willing to pay for it. So, you know, so I can't make that decision for the buyer. I can only educate them with the information, ask the questions of the listing agent, and then present that information and let them make that decision.
Right.
Hey, Jess.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yes, honey.
Hi there. There's two things. One, I've had in my old brokerage, we used Escalation all the time, and it was a KW brokerage. I find it super annoying when I get an escalation clause that goes up in little amounts.
Mm-hmm.
And I always say to my buyers, at what price would it break your heart to lose this house knowing that you lost it by, and what are that, $500, $1,000? Like, at what price? Because that's your number. But we need to go up and send in meaningful numbers. I got one that was like going up in $50 increments. I'm like, that's just.
Well, and honey, you bring up a really great point. And this is kind of back to the strategy of like, why would you have an odd number? You ask a great question. So I love that you asked that question, because that's the truth. You know, someone would be devastated if they lost a house over $500, really. Mm-hmm. And yet let's just pretend that all of us on this Zoom right now are all competing for this listing, and Toni's our listing agent. Mm-hmm. And you offer $50, but I'm offering $1,000 or $1,100. Already, it looks like a different level of offer, right? Absolutely. So I think those are all coaching points you make to a buyer, and yet you got to just respect what their walk-away number is and teach these strategies to them. And it yet is another way to be a value to your people, because the truth is this: you guys might give all the good advice in the universe and tell people, you know, this is what you need to do to get this house. And you say it to them and they hear you, but they don't hear you. You mean, have you had that where you've given the advice and they just don't take it? Yep. Well, the truth is even if you give all the great advice and you put it in writing and you tell it to them and you share it with them and they don't use your advice, if they lose on too many houses, they're going to blame you. They're not going to say, yeah, I should have followed your advice. So, you know, as an agent, just remember, these are strategies to help you win your offer. And yet this is just one of them. I would definitely in this market, though, consider this as the thing to be using, along with some other things that we're going to dive into. But before I leave escalation clause, are there any more questions or comments or things you've gotten stuck on or that you've seen that you
have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So does the seller have to take the escalation clause? So if, for example, me being the listing agent, and I'm presenting it to my seller, I get two dueling escalation clauses. One is $50 above and one is $500 above. Can the seller say, seriously, I'm just going to take the one that's 500 above and be done with it?
You want me to answer that?
Oh, yep, Toni, I've got you on. Sorry.
That's okay. No, they don't have to accept an escalation clause. I mean, the seller will accept whatever they want. They might just, I've actually had them say, you know what, we don't want to deal with the escalation clause. We're just going to counter offer at this amount. is the buyer willing to do that amount? And sometimes that's because the other agent still doesn't understand the escalation clause, or they don't know how to explain it to their seller, or they just want to streamline it and make it simple. And this is what we're going to counter offer back with. And that's that.
Yep.
So,
Great question.
Lou and I had that conversation many years ago, and he was explaining that to me. And I did ask him that question about how do you know what amount to go up by? And I think sometimes it's also dependent on the price of the home. If it's a luxury home, and Lou, you can jump in on this, it's probably going to be a bigger amount that you're going to go up, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's two good points there. One, downside of an escalation clause is you are kind of showing your cards. I mean, you're telling the seller, listen, I'm willing to pay this. I mean, I don't want to, but I'm willing to pay this amount. So I do caution my buyers. I say, hey, listen, you're flipping your cards over. And there's a chance they go, I don't care anything about your escalation clause. Now I want 410.
Right.
And so it's a risk. And recently, you're absolutely right, Toni. So I was doing my offers would always be 300,100 or 300,250, and I would escalate by $1,000. So I'm being slick, right? Because if your offer is 300,500, I only really got to go up like another $900. I don't have to go up because I'm already halfway there. Well, in this market, forget it. I mean, it's a shooting gallery right now. So now my minimum escalation is $1,500. I usually say 2,000 because a seller's looking at your contract going, okay, yeah, this guy offered me 300,000. This guy offered me 300,100. That's not a different contract. I mean, who cares about $100?
Right.
But if you say,
right, it's not like an entitlement because you actually escalated higher that Lou's offer is going to get accepted over Toni's. Toni may have also had her buyer include a handwritten note that was really thoughtful, and they liked that buyer so much that they skipped Lou's higher escalation. It's just a strategy. So it's not like locking you in. It's a strategy to stand out, and it works. And it's
got to be worth it.
Yeah, it's got to be worth it. And the truth is Lou is right. Yeah, you're showing your cards, but at the same time, this market, and I'm going to just screen share a few things. This market is wild, and you guys know it. You're feeling it, but there is like a massive lack of inventory, and this is from the MLS showing what normal looked like last year versus our inventory this year. And let me make sure I'm screen sharing the right thing here. Here we go. So we are in a crisis for inventory. And if you look at it from this perspective, new listings, we're kind of in the average of what we're used to, but look at pendings. Our pendings are off the grid. So we're selling them faster than we can stock the shelves. And so my analogy is like toilet paper during COVID. They can't make it fast enough right now. Same thing with listings. We just don't have enough inventory. And what is it affecting? It's affecting prices. Prices for the 100th consecutive month have continued to go up in all metros. Ours included. If you look at Tampa, according to Zillow, we're hitting like an all-time high for prices. So all this is driving all this. It's supply and demand, you guys. It's never anything more complex than that. And yet what I want you to know is this is a really good strategy. And I don't know if I'd write an offer without one right now. I don't know why I would. Why wouldn't you? And that would be the more thing. So yes, you might be showing your cards, but if you lose on too many with someone, you're going to lose that buyer. They're going to blame you. So other strategies, let's share. And Carly, I see your hand is up, or Karen, unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, because I can't see everybody. So if you have
Sorry, nope, I'm good.
Okay, it's from before. Okay, got it. So let's just share some other strategies, because escalation clause, and I really think it's important that you obviously start with that phone call to the listing agent, get the intel that you need. What would be great for what would your seller prefer for closing dates? Like, what are they looking for? What's important to them? When you ask those questions, you find out what you need to be. I mean, that's a really important thing to do. So if you're not doing that, of course, do that. But remember, numbers are numbers, and yet that handwritten note from your buyer saying specifically why they like that house and how they hope to live in it one day and what they're excited about and what they liked about the neighborhood and the lifestyle. A handwritten note is beating out cash investors right now. And the thing is, emotion makes people act, and this is still their home. They haven't closed yet, and they want it to go to a good family or a good person or a good this or a good that, and they want the neighbors to like each other. And the idea of a cash investor coming in and flipping it is kind of a villain-esque feel, you know. So if you get that handwritten letter out there, you'd be surprised the power of that, and that might just be the differentiator of offer one or two. So just know that that is like legit, and I would definitely recommend that you have your buyer write a personal one for each different listing that they might write an offer on.
Well, Jess, I'm going to just add on to that real quick.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to really be disclosing why a seller is selling or a buyer is buying without their written permission anyways. So this is just a safeguard for you because the buyers have actually written it themselves. So that's something else to consider.
Yeah, and I've heard one agent I thought was really smart. Her name's Pink. She goes by Pinky. If some of you watch her videos, she has the family do a video and send it.
Yeah.
So like talk about hamming it up, you know, the dog, the kids, the whole kit and caboodle. Like, hey, but you know what? If you want to be a strategist, that's a good strategy.
Yeah.
The other thing is have a clean offer. You know, you're not in the driver's seat right now if you're working with buyers. You're in the passenger seat hoping to get tapped on the shoulder with an accepted offer. So a clean offer. Don't ask them to ask for tchotchkes and furniture and, you know, all this other stuff. We don't sell furniture, by the way, guys. And then quick deadlines. Time kills deals. And if you're a listing agent and you see an offer coming at you with really extended time periods or slow moving time periods, that is not an attractive offer. So Toni, if I'm going to write you an offer, what are some of the things that would make you kind of like, with timelines? What would be kind of like your kind of limit right now? If you were getting an offer with inspection and all that, what kind of timelines are you hoping to see?
Definitely quick turnaround times, but I'm going to just caution people, if you're doing a short inspection period, please be sure the buyers are calling their inspector to make sure they can get out there in that time frame. You don't want to put them under, you know, the gun and not be able to satisfy that, and consider other things like, is there a lot of concerns visibly right now as it stands? Are they going to need time to get someone out there after the fact? But I would still consider doing a short inspection period, and if it has to be extended because a major issue came up, then you extend it. But you want to at least get your foot in the door and look as clean as possible. So I would say timeline wise, 5-day inspection period. I would say a response time frame. I always try to give 24 hours, but I put a time on it, not just a day, because our contract doesn't give a time unless it's a weekend or holiday. So ultimately you have your buyers on pins and needles waiting for a response from the seller. So, you know, today's July 23rd and it's 12:43. So I would probably do a deadline of July 24th by noon.
Great.
So, you know, just
that actually eliminates a lot of stress, because your buyer is going to be on pins and needles, like you said, until they find out, and they at least know that there's an end in sight. Like, we'll at least know by this time, right?
Yeah.
And if they get a faster response, even better, but they're not going to be like, did it come in yet? Did they call you yet? What did you hear? You know, they're not going to be driving you as nuts so either. That's a great comment.
Otherwise it's 11:59 and 59 seconds at night. And, you know, it's a whole day of waiting and angst. So not fun. Other things that I would look for is just making sure that the numbers make sense. So if I can close whenever the seller can close and have that flexibility. So let's just say we can close in 30 days. Be sure if they're getting a loan that the loan approval, you're not leaving that blank and making it 30 days. That also has to make sense. So you want that prior to the closing disclosure. So I might say, you know, loan approval in 23 days or 25 days. So just make sure that those numbers make sense.
So the only thing I want to add to this is financing. So, you know, some types of loans have low down payment. Some agents get very low earnest money on, you know, from their buyer. What do you feel, you know, let's just say it's a $300,000 house. What would you say is a decent earnest offer? I mean, if you were put money down, I mean, we're seeing some people still do $500 and $1,500. Do you think that's a deficiency on an offer?
Absolutely. It should be, besides luxury, if it's not luxury, it should be at least 1% of the purchase price, at least. If it's luxury, you know, I would say at least 2 to 3%, maybe even more, or doing an escrow deposit of 1% up front, and then after inspection period, submitting a second escrow deposit of maybe another 1 or 3 or whatever percentage. But definitely, depending on your price point, no one's going to be upset if they lose $500 or $1,000, but they're really going to be upset and involved if they're losing $5,000 or $3,000 on a $300,000 home at 1% escrow. So that's definitely something to look for. How much do they have invested to show that they're serious about this property?
Right, because at the same time, in this hot of a market, you don't want to take a listing off because you want to pull all those other leads that you could potentially get and all those sign calls and this and that. So you don't want to take a property off the market unless you know it's a ready, willing, and able buyer that's serious about this. And those are all telltale signs to kind of say, this offer compared to this offer, which one's actually better? And so just make sure it's not just the escalation clause, it's really this layered effect. And again, it starts with a conversation with that listing agent to try to mirror and match what the seller's hopes and needs are. And they'll definitely be able to give you some good feedback on that. So there's a great question from Alana on the escalation clause, Toni. If the buyer requests copies of the competing offers, do you send the entire offer or only the first page?
So, you know, I send the entire offer, but I obliterate the names just for privacy reasons. But I show them that there is an offer, and I give them the whole offer so that they understand what all the terms are as well. Because even though escalation clause is based on dollar amounts, there might be other terms in that contract that are appealing. So I send all 12 pages.
Great. And Ilana will be putting this recording on the U Baldini YouTube channel. So you'll be able to get it afterwards. And for those of you that don't know where to get that, just ask your front desk and they'll point you in the right direction. Daniela has another great question. Toni, if we win the escalation clause, so you win, do we need to rewrite the offer?
So what I do is I just make those changes on the first page, confirming what the dollar amount is so that there are no questions to be concerned about, that we're all on the same page. The lender knows the dollar amount. We're all clear on what that dollar amount is that we ended at. So I make a change on the first page. I don't know, you know, if anyone else on this forum has done an escalation clause. I know Lou has, but I definitely make that change. I just want to be clear of what the terms are. But something else that I wanted to bring up, Jessica, and I know that you touched on it a little, but if you have buyers that are being financed in this market, the best thing that you can do for that buyer is get them fully approved. Get them through underwriting with that lender, because they're pretty much as good as cash, and you're going to be in a better position for that buyer. And if they're with a lender that doesn't do that, then they might want to consider switching lenders or go to Keller Offers, or not Keller Offers, but Keller Mortgage. You know,
that is huge. And I think we need to drill in a little bit further on this. You want to make sure that their lender is even ready to call that listing agent and say, my person I'm working with is ready, willing, and able, and I can prove it to you. Yep. So you want to even coach the lender to be willing to do that, and even maybe even do it in anticipation, like calling saying, I just want to let you know I'm working with Joe Schmo, and I know he's writing an offer on your listing, and I want you to know that we've already gone through underwriting with this guy and we're ready to rock and roll. That creates so much confidence in that buyer. Or at a bare minimum, tell them that the buyer agent on this deal is Toni Benton, and she's going to be calling you about Joe Schmo. Make sure that you call her back immediately or take her call immediately. And so those are little things that you want to coach. And if they're not willing to do that, that's not a great lender. Let's just be honest. You want them to be championing their customer too, in other words. So just make sure that you're communicating that, because some people just don't do it, which makes no sense.
So see, Lou does his a little differently. He just put in the chat that he sends page 1, but he also obliterates the names of the folks. So everyone does it differently. I just think that's your personal preference.
I like the idea of writing it clearly at what price you ended with, because it may not be the full escalation amount. Mm-hmm. And I think there's, any way that you can eliminate any blurry, fuzzy logic, the better, right? So I think that it was really wise what you suggested. Daniela added to her question, what about line 19, where we wrote that there is an escalation clause? Daniela, if you could unmute yourself, what do you mean by that? I'm not sure what you mean.
Line 19 of the contract.
I did ask if when we win with escalation clause, if we need to rewrite the offer. And Toni said that she just changed the first page. She changed the amount. Mm-hmm. And now we still have on that line 19 that our offer also has escalation.
Got it. So are you saying, are you striking that line 19,
exactly.
Taking it off
yes.
when you rewrite
yes.
it? How do you do that?
Line 19.
So where you had just a noted escalation addenda, I think it was. Do you strike that when you rewrite page 1 or
section 19? Okay, sorry. No, I keep it on there because it was still part of the contract. I just changed. I like to have a paper trail. I like to understand how we got to that price. So I keep escalation clause on there. It's still attached. I just have a confirmed number on the front page.
Okay. Which I think is wise, because that way that eliminates any question, especially if you're working with an agent that doesn't know how to do this or understand how to articulate it to their person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think if you guys, we're obviously recording this, so you can re-listen to this and we can, make sure you understand it. But I would say you're going to need to know how to do this for yourself, but you're also going to need to know how to explain it to the agent receiving it in case they're not familiar. Because this is definitely a very cool strategy, but you'll be surprised how many agents don't know what it is. And so I would be real careful to make sure that they feel comfortable articulating it to their person, to their seller, and explaining it. Don't talk over their heads, because they might just assume, say they know what you're talking about. You want to make sure they really do.
And when you guys are giving your buyers that you're working with a list of lenders, make sure that you know which ones will do a full approval, and make sure the buyers are aware that that takes time. It's not going to happen like a regular pre-approval where they talk on the phone, get a couple of statements and pay stubs. It's going to take a little bit of time. So they want, in this market, to get fully approved, but that's not going to happen overnight. It still has to go through underwriting. And with all of the refis that lenders are doing and all of that, it's going to take about a week. It could take 4 days. It could take a week and a half.
Well, and let's just say, because Karen says, can you role play this? I think I'm role playing what you want, Karen, and if we're not, speak up. But basically, if Toni's my buyer, I'm going to say, hey, Toni, one of the strategies we're going to use to get you more likely to be accepted is we're going to do this escalation clause. And I would actually educate my buyer about it before they even start writing offers, so they understand it and they get excited about the strategy. And you're going to say, you're going to write this handwritten note on some lovely stationery that you own, and you're going to maybe even get a video. We're going to win what you want. And I want to make you as attractive as a cash buyer. So you're going to meet with your lender and get through underwriting before we even have to write an offer. And if your lender won't do it, here are 2 people I know that will. And it makes you almost as if you were a cash buyer. It makes you that much more attractive. And so you kind of role play it like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really what you were looking for, Karen. So if that's not, speak up.
Or were you looking for like, how would you explain? So like Jess is saying, we'll use an escalation clause. And if I'm the buyer, I'm going to say, wow, Jess, that sounds really good. What is an escalation clause? How does that work?
Is that what you were looking for, Karen? Are you at the airport? Oh, okay. Like, it looks like the airport.
Yeah, Luke is getting ready to get back from Ohio.
Okay, got it. Is that what you were wanting us to role play?
Yeah, so just how would you say it over to the listing agent then? You're representing the buyer, you're bringing in the offer now. So you would call them and say, hey, I'm really excited about our offer. We're going to present it with an escalation clause, and this is what that looks like. Then you explain what the escalation clause is to them.
Yeah. But you've probably, called the agent before you've even written the offer to find out what terms are appealing to the seller. And you're going to say, by the way, we understand there's multiple offers and we're going to submit this with an escalation clause. Are you aware of what that is? And do you know how to explain that to the buyer? Now, would I say that to a seasoned agent? I wouldn't ask them if they know how to explain it, but I would just say, hey, are you familiar with an escalation clause? Yeah. And then I would explain to them what it is, just like what we went over. It's kind of like eBay for real estate. We're going to go up in increments not to exceed this amount on a total purchase price, but we're just putting our best foot forward. Or like Lou was saying, yeah, we're showing you all of our cards up front because we want this house. And, I'm hoping that that's appealing to the seller.
And you can even say, and it's reflective because my buyer has even gone through the underwriting process with their lender, and the lender is available to have that confirmed with you. And they even included this little note to your seller, and you just say, and layer it on, and hope that you make it. Hope that you're the one, because you still might not get picked.
Right. And I'm hoping that you guys are calling these lenders before you're even writing the offers, because, the questions I ask the lenders are this: if it's the buyer I'm working with, or if I have the listing and I get an offer letter. Patty has helped me with this a few times. Hey, can you call the lender and just find out information about this buyer? How strong are they? I mean, some lenders, they will just vomit all kinds of information that they're not supposed to. And great for me, a little scary for them. But I mean, sometimes they'll give credit scores. Oh yeah, they got credit score in the 800s, or well, I don't know, they're only 560. I mean, you'll get so much information. It gives you a little more insight as to this buyer, who they are, how strong they are, and you can present that additional information to the seller so that they can make an informed decision. You want the strongest buyer. You should be having that conversation with the lender for the buyer you're working with, and you should be reaching out as soon as you get a pre-approval letter on any of your listings to find out information about the buyer for your seller.
This is like nugget after nugget after nugget after nugget. Good thing we're recording, right? It's good stuff. And this is the thing. Your ability to say what you can do for a buyer is also how you win buyers. So let's just say any of you are doing an open house. Have these conversations about the market being so competitive, and some of the strategies that you use are like an escalation clause and this and that. And anyone that's looking at houses that might be a buyer can be like, wow, you know what you're doing. You are the guy I need to work with, or you're the gal I need to work with. And it's a great way of kind of showing off and showing up. So I'm so grateful for Toni's time today. She's one of our great broker associates at Clearwater. She teaches a lot of the contract classes, and you do it so well. And this is such a great strategy for all of us. So I see a couple of you are asking for samples. So we'll get a sample screenshot with the names taken off, and we'll shoot that over to all the offices. If you're not in one of our offices, just reach out to me directly at Jessica Fox at KW, and I'll make sure you get a copy of all this. Thanks again for your time, Toni. I always learn something from you, so thank you. Thanks you, Lou, for having me. Karen, thank you for all those that participated and asked questions. And together, we will all learn with each other through this wild market. So have a great rest of your day, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.